So asset workflow. So within Unity we have, Unity provides you with lots of tools for generating a real-time project, but it also relies on lots of assets. And those assets you may create with a different program, something like Maya or 3D Studio Max or Photoshop. And you want to be able to have a workflow between these applications. So you want to be able to get things that you've created in these other applications into Unity. And it's fairly transparent. So what Unity does is, as we've covered, it has this shared, let me just open our current project directory. It has this shared directory. So every file that is readable by Unity and is in this directory will be attempted to be imported by Unity. So that means that you can simply save a file into this directory while Unity is open, and then go back to Unity, and Unity will attempt to import it. So let's demonstrate that. This is 3D Studio Max. I'm going to create the only object you can create in 3D Studio Max, teapot. And I'm going to save this in that directory. I've got lots of directories. This is the one. So I'm going to save this in here for teapot. And this is just the native .max format. So I've just saved that teapot. So I haven't yet exported it to FBX. I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. And now I've just gone back to Unity. Unity's always been open. I've just gone back to Unity, and you'll see they've got the loading icon here. What's happening now is it's attempting. I'm just going to close 3D Studio Max. Now, if I go to my Process Explorer, it's attempting to import that object. So you can see that even though I've closed Max, there's an instance of Max running here, and it's because it's a native file format. It's not an FBX, which is a standard, intermediary file format. It's loading Max. Actually, it's loading in the background Max, and it's attempting to convert that to something that's usable by Unity. Now, I've never done a teapot before, so I don't know how long it's going to take. But let's see. SkyDriver's running as well. Let me close that. Okay, so it's still trying to import it. It's taking a while. Once it's imported, then so what it's doing now is that it's doing the step that I was too lazy to do. It's trying to convert it automatically to an FBX file, because that's what Unity likes. It doesn't like the standard .max file. And in general, it's better to export your files to a .fbx rather than just have them as a .max file. But it really kind of depends on the file. I mean, I've used some very complex meshes in 3D Max, and they just and skinned meshes, which import in a couple of seconds into Unity. But this teapot seems to be causing a few problems. I'm sure it'll finish eventually.
Does Unity have trouble with canonical objects?
Possibly, I don't know. Okay, so I'll just, while this is happening, I'm sure it hasn't crashed. I'll just go back to the presentation. So we have a single shared working directory, so changes that you make to files in 3D Max and Photoshop will then be imported directly into Unity. So this is, again, a very, very nice feature, which also does, as Angus said, does raise questions regarding version control, because if it's so easy to just make a little change here and then load it into Unity, you have to, if you're working with a team, you have to be very careful with versioning of files. But that's the idea. There's a single shared working directory. The asset store I've already talked about, so I'll skip this. You have to be signed up, but you have to be signed up when you first register Unity, which you have to do as soon as you install it anyway. So you'll have you sign in with your Unity username, and then within the asset store, everything that you've bought will be in kind of your bought or downloaded. Oh, right, so it's imported the teapot. That's asset server. So everything that I've ever downloaded in the asset store. It's sometimes very slow at loading the asset store. I don't know why. Is in this handy icon here with the arrow going down and the tray. So these are all the game packages I've ever downloaded or bought. So it's quite nice and shows you if there's a new version available and things like that. So let's go back to our teapot. Here is our teapot. It's created a, this is a prefab, and if we go right click on it and say show in Explorer, you'll be able to see that we have, that it's just called teapot.max, but somewhere else within Unity, maybe within the library, I don't know where, it's a mystery, somewhere within the library file perhaps, there's going to be an FBX file relating to this teapot.
Can you delete the max file then? Is the max file still useful?
You need to keep the max file.
Okay.
Because it is a max file to us. So if we were to edit it, we still would edit the max file.
But Unity is not using the max file.
Unity is using an imported an FBX version of
the
it.
max file is no longer relevant to Unity at this.
If we edit the max file, it directly is changed in the Unity import? Or
Yeah.
do we
So-
have to re-import
But
it?
it always takes a while to import max files.
Yeah.
It's more easier to export in FBX and put it in the assets.
Yeah. In general, if you're lucky and have a file which imports quickly into Unity from Max, as a Max file, I would say work with the Max file. But if this teapot, for instance, if I was to edit the teapot 20 times a day, I wouldn't want to wait for 5 minutes to import every time, so I would export it to an FBX each time. So here is our teapot. I pressed F to zoom in on the object, to focus on the object, and we can see that it's a pretty nice teapot. It's quite small though. So let's scale it up a bit. So you can use the scale. It's the same translate, rotate, scale keys that are in Maya and Max, which is W for translate, E for rotate, and R for scale, or you can just click up here. So we can scale it up. And if we just press play here, we will see that we should have our teapot here. It's maintained the same shader that we gave it in Max, which is a standard diffuse default shader and material. I'll talk about shaders and materials in a little bit.